My friends, welcome to Origins. My name's Don Chapman. It's my privilege to be your host. Origins is a forum where we take the evidence of science and we use it to validate the truth of creation. I'm really excited about today's program, and I hope you'll be excited too when you discover that our guest today is Dr. Steve Austin. And Dr. Austin is a field research geologist with a PhD from Penn State. He has done work on 6 of the 7 continents in the world, but today we're going with him to the Holy Land, and we're going to talk about a subject that just has to fascinate you as it does me. We're going to talk about Sodom and Gomorrah, aren't we, sir?
That's right.
And do you know where they are?
I believe the sites of Sodom, Gomorrah, and Admah Zeboim, the cities of the plain, have been found.
And that's really exciting. And today we're going to look at how you find them, and then on our next show we're going to talk about what you discovered when you look at the evidence there.
Yes, so I'm going to talk about where the cities are, the cities of the plain, and then I'm going to talk about what geologically happened.
You know, one of the joys that I've had as the host of this show is that when we get to interview great scientists like you, I discover you have a whole different set of eyes than us who are laymen to this field. And there are things that you see both in the rocks and then from the rocks back into Scripture, and then things in Scripture that point you to rocks that maybe some of us other folks would miss. And so I'm really excited to be able to borrow your expertise today and to look at this fascinating subject of Sodom and Gomorrah. Will you tell us kind of where we're going to go?
Well, why search for the lost cities of Sodom and Gomorrah? Where is the region of the lost cities? The biblical text, I think, gives us the answers to that. Have the lost cities been found? And I'll suggest to you that we know within a very tight area where those cities are located. And then I'll talk in the second program about the archaeology and geology of the sites and the evidence concerning the cause and the timing of the destruction of the...
Now, Sodom and Gomorrah comes up because Abram, before he's Abraham, is traveling, and he has with him his nephew Lot. And what happens?
Well, that's described there in Genesis 13:8. Abram said to Lot, "Let there be no strife, I pray thee, between me and thee, and between my herdmen and thy herdmen, for we are brethren." And this strife that developed caused them to have to split.
They were overblessed.
Okay, they had big flocks, and they needed to split. Lot looked down, he lifted up his eyes, and beheld all the plain of the Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, even as the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, as thou comest unto Zoar, out of Genesis 13:10. Let me call your attention to the word plain. That's a very unusual Hebrew word. It's the Hebrew kirkar. And it says the plain area was well watered. And there's a special Hebrew word there meaning well irrigated. It means it had a farming network and system. And so this land that Lot chose, and he moved in. Of course, Abram took what was left. Abram dwelt in the land of Canaan, up there by Hebron, or to modern Hebron today, or Mamre. And Lot dwelt in the cities of the plain and pitched his tent towards Sodom. He pitched his tent towards Sodom, then he later moved in. Okay, Genesis 13:12. The cities of the plain is introduced into that text. Cities is the word aris, normal word for cities, but cities of the plain. And that's the kirkar word. So aris ha kirkar is this formula for the cities of the plain. And that is distinctive of Sodom, Gomorrah, Zoar, Admah, Zeboim, the 5 cities of the plain. In fact, they're mentioned here in this text, Genesis 14:2. Sodom, Gomorrah, Zoar, Admah, Zeboim.
It's a term that it isn't just saying there are 5 cities, it's a term for that specific region.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and so it's very descriptive when you say Aris ha kirkar in Hebrew. The destruction event is described, Genesis 19. Then the Lord rained upon Sodom and upon Gomorrah brimstone and fire from the Lord out of heaven, and he overthrew those cities and all the plain and all the inhabitants of the cities, all that grew upon the ground. He rained, that's the word matar, normal word for rain. The word brimstone is gophrite. It's a liquid sealant or some type of pitch-like substance.
So when we hear the word brimstone, it's not necessarily
Sulfur.
stone.
It's not sulfur, probably not stone.
It's liquefied.
It's some type of liquid.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's a liquid sealant, I would say. Or something distilled, like from resinous wood or from pitch or tar. Okay. And I think it's tar,
okay.
Personally. And then the word overthrow appears here in the Hebrew. And that's the Hebrew word hafek, which means to flip over. He overthrew those cities. So now we have this operative verb that describes how the cities were destroyed. They were destroyed in the Hebrew word by overturning or overthrew.
Like flipping a hamburger.
Yes. So
wow.
hafek is the Hebrew word.
Okay.
They were flipped over.
Yeah. How about that?
Okay, and what did Abraham see? He looked toward Sodom and toward Gomorrah and all the land and the plain, and beheld, and lo, the smoke of the country went up as the smoke of a furnace. And the word furnace is used there, and that's this baking furnace, a pottery baking furnace, not a normal bread furnace, an oven. It's some type of forced air furnace. And so the smoke was extreme. Did Abraham see the simultaneous collapse and ignition of the cities of the plain?
And you say yes.
I'd say yes.
Okay.
Okay. Peter describes a destruction event, 2 Peter 2:6, and turning the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah into ashes, condemned them with an overthrow, making them an example.
Sodom and Gomorrah becomes very significant, not just historically, but prophetically. It's
Yes.
something that's always looked back to as comparison for God's judgment, isn't it?
And Peter sees it that way.
Yeah.
And interesting, the word overthrow, right?
Yeah.
He condemned them with an overthrow. The overthrow word is catastrophe.
Oh, wow.
Okay? He flipped the cities over. Kata, under, turn, whatever you want to say. Peter translates the Hebrew word hafek into this Greek word catastrophe.
So
catastrophe.
it becomes the picture in the dictionary for the word catastrophe.
It does.
You want to know what a catastrophe is? Look at Sodom and Gomorrah.
Okay, so Peter coined the word,
Yeah.
and he coined the word thinking of these cities.
So that's the first we know that word is ever used.
As far as we know.
Wow, that's amazing.
Well, Sodom and Gomorrah became famous for the brazenness of human wickedness, the swiftness of God's judgment, and, of course, the deliverance or provision for the righteous. And that is what we know Sodom and Gomorrah for. Where were the lost cities of Sodom and Gomorrah? The cities of the plain are associated with the Dead Sea. That is because of the text in Genesis. They're associated with the plain. They're between mountains, so they cannot be in the mountains. There's mountains on both sides of the Dead Sea. And it's within this gigantic rift-faulted basin called the Dead Sea Jordan Rift Basin. Okay, where is the region of the cities? The key to locating the region of the cities is to find the surviving city of Zoar.
4 of the 5 cities are totally destroyed.
One survives.
One survives, and that's the city of Zoar.
That's right. And if we can find that, then the cities must be around it. And so that's the key to finding the cities. The city that survived. Historic sources refer to Zoar as a city involved in commercial trade as recently as the 10th century A.D.
All right.
Okay, and the Madaba map, which is a mosaic map, records the location of Zoar in the 6th century A.D. We have all kinds of other documents that point us back to the location of Zoar. But the summary, it's a city where Lot survived the catastrophe. It's the southern boundary of the Promised Land in the book of Deuteronomy. It's located in Moab by Isaiah and Jeremiah because Isaiah and Jeremiah deliver judgment speeches against Moab, including Zoar, the city. And then Josephus, a historian, a Jewish historian at the time of Christ, says it's south of the Dead Sea.
Yeah. And Josephus has a tremendous track record as far as everything else we know that he tells us.
He's a good historian.
Yes.
And then the Arabs reported in the district of Asafia as recently as the 10th century A.D., and the Madaba map identifies it as the modern city of Safi, there in Jordan, southeast of the Dead Sea. So I like going to Madaba and sleuthing out this map. It's called the the Madaba map. And there in Madaba in Jordan is the Church of St. George, and the floor of this church that was excavated 100 years ago is a mosaic map. The Madaba mosaic map, about 32 square meters of the floor of the church, is a mosaic tile map. 750,000 tiles.
Wow.
And it
Wow.
east is up on biblical maps. And so you see the Dead Sea, you see the Jordan River going in here. Here's the Jordan River. Okay, and you got the Dead Sea. Okay, and then you got over here in the corner there, you've got Zoar identified. And so that's what I want to show you a little bit more carefully is what's going on there.
That's an amazing map. Now that's about 600 AD?
600 AD.
That's a crusade.
This is a crusade map, and it shows you the location of
Southeast
Zora,
of the Dead Sea.
southeast of the Dead Sea. And it says Bela, which is the original name, and then also known as Zoar. And then it shows you next to it the sanctuary of Holy Lot, to the honor of Holy Lot. So this is fascinating. Here's the city of Zoar. Here's a sanctuary next to it, and it's southeast of the Dead Sea.
Okay.
And so let's go see those locations. Here you see the modern city of Safi, which sits over Zoar. And then you have the sanctuary of Holy Lot, which was identified off of the map.
So there is a city there today where Zoar was.
Modern Safi, yes.
Have you been there?
I have.
And it's a functioning city?
It's a functioning city. And under it are the ruins of the city of Zoar.
Okay.
Up on the side of the mountain is the sanctuary of Holy Lot. The sanctuary of Holy Lot was excavated by a Greek archaeologist several years ago now. And it was 3 alcoves, 1, 2, and 3. And the most interesting part of the alcove was not the main part of the sanctuary, it's right in here, which has got an assembly area, but the main interesting area is over here in the cave. And that it opens to a cave. And what's amazing is the sanctuary. Okay. And it sits on the side of the mountain. Genesis 19, verse 30 says, and Lot went up out of Zoar and dwelt in the mountain.
Yeah.
Okay.
So and that cave, there you are.
There I am. He went up out of Zoar and dwelt in the mountain, and he dwelt in a cave.
Okay.
So the Byzantines obviously revered this as the
They saw
cave.
that as the cave where he went to be safe while this was all happening in Sodom and Gomorrah.
After the event, he went up there.
After the event there, all right.
And whether it's the cave, the actual cave he dwelt in or not, doesn't matter to me. But he dwelt in a cave, and they did find what are called early Bronze III excavations. So we know that during that time, people used the cave.
Just so our folks are with you, early Bronze III is
the
2,000 years before Christ, which is the time of Abraham.
About the time of Abraham, somebody was using that cave.
Yeah, so that makes
So
sense.
looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, must be a duck. City of Safi from Lot's cave.
All right, let's take a break right there, and we'll come back and talk about the significance of this. I think you're onto something fascinating, and we want to see what God was up to there. So don't you go away, Dr. Austin, and don't you go away. We'll be right back.
Today's guest on Origins, Dr. Steve Austin, is a field research geologist with his PhD in sedimentary geology. He is senior research scientist with the Institute for Creation Research. He has been involved in geologic exploration for 40 years on 6 of the 7 continents of the world. Steve has also done extensive field research at the Grand Canyon and Mount St. Helens. He is the author of several books, videos, and more than 30 technical geology papers. One of his books, Footprints in the Ash, deals with the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens. Dr. Austin can be reached at Institute for Creation Research, 1806 Royal Lane, Dallas, Texas, 75229.
We are back with Dr. Steve Austin, and we're looking for Sodom and Gomorrah. And Dr. Austin has told us that the key to finding Sodom and Gomorrah is to find Zoar, because it was the one city of the 5 cities of the plain that survived. And you were showing us where it was on a map.
It's in the modern country of Jordan. It's been located throughout history southeast of the Dead Sea, and there is Zoar. All of our thinking should be at Zoar, because Zoar is a surviving city of the plain.
All right.
And I've been looking at the site, modern Safi, which is Zoar, and there are places that could be the campsite where Lot fled to. And so finding Lot's campsite would be impossible, but losing walled cities like Sodom and Gomorrah, that would be impossible. Okay, where was Sodom? Here is the key to locating Sodom relative to Zoar. The text of the scripture, Genesis 19, 15, 16, and 23. When the morning dawned, the angels urged Lot to hurry. Hurry what? And leave.
Get out of there.
Get out of there. Okay, and he's in the gate, right? And they brought him out and set him outside the city. So they drag him out of the gate, and he's outside the city. The sun had risen upon the earth when Lot had entered into Zoar. And boy, is that an important sense. The sun had risen upon the earth when Lot entered into Zoar. In other words, by noon, he's in Zoar. So he's in the city.
At dawn, he's there by noon, so it has to be 6 hours or less.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Right.
Okay.
And so, and Lot is no marathon runner.
No.
He's old, and he is going to have to make this distance.
Lot, he's probably carrying everything he can with him.
Okay,
Yeah.
probably is. So I put a 12-mile range circle and a 20-mile range circle around Zoar. So he's going to be in Sodom, and he's got to get to Zoar in 6 hours. So he could be on the plain there north, or he could be on the plain there south.
Okay.
For a variety of reasons, this one, the one to the north, is better. Where was Sodom? The northern area is better, somewhere in that range, between those two range circles, 12 to 20 miles out from Zoar. He's got to make that transit in 6 hours. Well, it's got the biggest early Bronze III site. And the biggest early Bronze III site is there in that northern square.
Now, when you say site, you mean archaeological dig.
Archaeological walled city.
There is a city there,
There's a
and
city,
it's a big city.
a big
We don't know
city.
the name of it for sure, but there's a city there.
Yes.
Okay.
And it has a long duration to it. In other words, it has a stratigraphic succession,
Gotcha.
which argues that it's a prominent city that's existed for a long time. It's a better southern boundary for Israel, okay? And then it's easier seen from Mamre. Mamre, or modern Hebron, is where Abraham's going to look at it.
Right.
And it'd be harder to see that southern square than the northern square. And so the northern square is a better place to have the city from the standpoint of where Abraham's going to see it. And it's easier seen, okay? And then it has an excellent sister city site, which is going to be Gomorrah.
If you got Sodom, you got to have Gomorrah.
So if you have a major city like Sodom, you got to have Gomorrah next to it. The site is called Babadra. Babadra is the early Bronze III archaeological site that I believe is the city of Sodom. The location of the cities of the plain could be like this. We have Sodom there north. It's on a wadi coming down, Wadi Kerik. There's another wadi coming down here, so that could be the location of Gomorrah.
Tell them what the wadi is.
Wadi is a drainage,
Okay.
or a creek, okay, and it's where the water comes down onto the plain, and so you're going to irrigate the plain. Zoar, or it could be right there, modern Safi, with its own wadi, and then Admah and Zeboim could be south. And so the references in the Bible could be from north to south, just in order as you might cross them on the road as you travel. And the location of the cities of the plain is fairly well understood. Okay, Lot and Abraham. Okay, there's Mamre over there, right? And Abraham is over there, and Lot is in Sodom, right? And so Lot sees the cities of the plain and moves into Sodom. Abraham goes up to Mamre. Abraham settles there, and it's the region of Canaan. And so here are the 5 cities sitting there. I think the biblical text And what we know archaeologically about the area argues that these are the cities of the plains southeast of the Dead Sea.
By the way, this is incredible, fascinating information, and it makes me want to get my shovel and go over there with you and look, because it sounds like there's some exciting work to be done yet to verify where Sodom and Gomorrah are. Would you agree with that?
I agree.
Now, but there's two verses that we have here that we want to end the show with, because it's one thing to talk about Sodom. It's something else to ask the question, what's the biblical implication? Why? What's the sin of Sodom? What made this place bring on the judgment of God?
Ezekiel describes what the sin of Sodom is. Look, this was the iniquity of your sister Sodom. She and her daughter had pride, fullness of food, abundance of idleness. Neither did she strengthen the hand of the poor and needy. They were haughty and committed abominations before me.
Yeah, now when I read that verse, a couple things jump out at me. It's talking about, I think, a whole worldview of that city. And it says that, first of all, their hearts were full of pride. They had all they wanted. You know, when people don't have to live for survival, then they have a chance to think about what else is important. And they became, the word I would choose would be narcissistic. They sat by the pool and they looked at themselves and they fell in love with themselves. And then they defied God by turning to abominations, which we would see from the story of Lot as homosexual acts, saying that God's order is not the right order. Would you say that's fair?
And it almost sounds like today.
Yeah, it does. Seems
And
to be where the human heart heads.
we have pride, and
Yes.
we have fullness of food. We have abundance of idleness.
Yeah, we sure do.
And yeah, the narcissistic attitude of our day. And then in the context of Sodom and Gomorrah is this big question that's asked there in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 29. And the whole land thereof is brimstone and salt and burning. And that's describing what it's going to be like after God judges Israel for abandoning his law. Like the overthrow of Sodom and Gomorrah, Admon Zeboim, which the Lord overthrew in his anger and his wrath. And then even all nations shall say, wherefore hath the Lord done this unto the land? What meaneth the heat of this great anger?
Yeah. What does it mean? What does the great anger say to you?
We're actually fulfilling the prophecy by asking the question.
Sure we are.
Do you realize what we're doing?
We're asking the question.
We're
just as
asking the question
Moses said we would.
that we would.
Yes.
And what meaneth the heat of this great anger? And we're looking at the powerful judgment of these cities and the residue of these cities sitting there asking this question.
Now, we very glibly can say, God bless America. Do we believe that God still judges nations?
That's what we need to take home from Sodom and Gomorrah, is that God is sovereign in the swiftness of his judgment.
So if we follow in their footsteps, as you said when you read Ezekiel that we are, we could fear that as a nation, God's judgment would be imminent.
Could be on us too.
That's right. Well, thank you, sir. I think that's fascinating work, and we have a second show where we're going to look at a little more of the evidence for where Sodom and Gomorrah is and some of the implications of that. But we don't have to wait for the next show to make the application that when a nation doesn't live according to God's law, we court his judgment. And, you know, we need to care about our country because we're a part of our country and we're a part of our culture. And I believe that this show does anything. It not only verifies God's word by showing us that the cities in the book of Genesis are real cities that are really there, but it also shows us the righteousness of God and the judgment of God. And we need to pray for America. We need to pray for a revival that will turn us back to a nation God can bless rather than a nation God judges. Let's learn from Sodom and Gomorrah before it's too late. Remember, my friends, there's one take home I never want you to forget, and it's certainly this. It's God's view that he created you. That should be your worldview too. I want you to think about this show. I want it to lead you to prayer. So until next time, God bless you, my friend.
Thank you for watching this edition of Origins. If you'd like a copy of the PowerPoint information presented today, you can download a PDF file of program number 1005 from our website at www.originstv.org. Or for a DVD of this series, send a $12 donation to cover shipping and handling and write to Origins, program number 1005, Cornerstone Television, Wall, Pennsylvania 15148.
Origins is made possible by the faithful prayers and the financial support of you, our Cornerstone Television family.